Hello, all you beautiful people, and welcome to or welcome back to the Voice of Reality, a podcast. As always, thank you all for being here and for tuning in. I'm honestly so grateful to every single one of you. And please don't forget to like, comment, and share so I can see you all. And thank you for engaging, of course, but also so that the podcast can reach and help even more people who need it. So, how are we all feeling? I know you can't answer me on that question, but I do hope you are all having an amazing week, an amazing month, and day itself. The past few weeks have been spicy, I shall say. I'm currently in the UAE, in Dubai, and wow, she is hot. It's only just about after cooling down the past 2 days, and I have never been so grateful for a breeze in the air and a drop in temperature. Now, don't get me wrong, I am obsessed with the sunshine and hot weather, but this took the absolute biscuit and it did take it to the bit of extreme. More so when just trying to do like everyday things, like getting steps in. Wow, that was honestly like an absolute chore. Normally, I'd love going out for a walk in the morning or evening, or even both, but you would literally leave your doorstep and be drenched in sweat. It was just extremely uncomfortable. It really had me thinking if I do prefer extreme heat or rain. One day over here, in the midst of the blaring heat and sunshine, it did actually start raining out of nowhere. Honestly, it was wild and I was in a bit of disbelief. But I was walking home from the gym and I swear to God, it was probably the nicest and best walk I had been on in about 3 months. The rain made walking so much easier, and I never in my life thought I'd say that or be grateful for the rain itself. But it is getting better, and that's the main thing. I can enjoy my walking every morning and even in the evening and actually walk places without being in a pool of sweat after 5 minutes. That was also very annoying because if you did have to go somewhere, you couldn't even walk because by the time you got there, you would smell and just be so sweaty. It was awful. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still pretty spicy over here, but it's definitely more of a bearable spice. So, for that, I am extremely, extremely grateful. I hope we are all out there as well, practicing our gratitude and just looking at the more positive sides of things each day. Something as small as saying or writing out 3 things that you're grateful for each morning. For me today, it's number one, my morning walk, number two, my first sip of coffee, and number three, planning out my day and just making sure all is in place. These things are so simple, yet so effective for my day. And just being grateful every morning with such small, simple things makes the positives seem so much better. Okay, so let's get into our Let's Be Real section. On this section, I wanted to chat about injuries, but also illness. Actually, a lot of my clients have been ill the past few weeks, and that is absolutely fine. As I always say, we are literally all only human, so of course we will be sick from time to time. I do wonder, though, what it would be like to have an immune system made of steel. That honestly must be nice. But anyway, it's so important to know that rest and recovery is vital. You don't want to prolong the illness and then in the long run being worse instead of getting better. But it is also important to keep your mindset focused on what you can do. Maybe you can't make it to the gym and your energy is just far too low to train, but maybe you could get out for a walk. It doesn't have to be the longest walk ever, but some fresh air could be amazing for the body and the mindset, and also a little bit of activity in the day. Maybe you can't train or exercise, but maybe you could control your nutrition and make sure you're making some pretty good choices. You can still make a ton of progress if you are sick. I don't understand why people just write off the entire week because of one small inconvenience. There is still so much you can do. So stop focusing on the can'ts. Then we come into injuries, and the same thing applies. It's so important, and I mean extremely important, when injured, to not train on that injury itself and make it any worse. Why on earth would we want to prolong it? And why on earth would we want to potentially be out for the count inevitably or longer than needed? Recovery is always the best medicine, but you can still do so much to see progress and see your goals somewhat come to life. Depending on the injury itself, it's very important to see what you can do. I have had and still have a few clients with injuries or injure themselves along the way. Not from my plans, of course, may I add, but just something behind the scenes or in different aspects of life. And what we do is assess the situation together and get a plan in place that allows us to still make progress, even if it's the smallest amounts. Maybe it's the upper body or the lower body, depending on which we get a training plan in place to see what suits. If certain exercises need to be avoided, then we avoid them. And if certain exercises need to be added in, then we add them in. And hey, you do know just because you've sprained your ankle or even pulled a muscle, you don't actually have to eat all of the food in the fridge and start feeling sorry for yourself. This will not fix it. So, a huge element that can still be controlled is your nutrition. Whether you're ill or injured, nutrition is 80% of the work, literally the biggest element and most important when it comes to your progress and your goals. So make sure you're controlling it. Even when injured, even when ill, nutrition is number one and is key. You can still do so much. Don't focus on what you can't do, or else you'll be spiraling into a black hole. Progress can still be made, so concentrate on what you can and the positives instead. Okay, so on this week's episode, and can I please just say that I'm so excited about this one? I feel like we've all been waiting for it since episode one, and I've been waiting to talk about it since episode one. But okay, on this week's episode, we will be talking all things menstrual cycle queens, and I know that this is a big one. I really want you all to get as much as you possibly can from this episode. So I am going to break it down so that the information itself can be absorbed in the best way possible. That being said, of course, this will mean that there will be probably like a part two and a part three, as honestly, there is so much information for us to chat about and to delve into here. But we love it for that. The power of being female is to absolutely be female, and it is just incredible. We are quite literally superhumans. So today we will be chatting about four main topics themselves: the menstruation, the luteal phase, ovulation, and the follicular phase. These four phases we will chat about and delve into. There is so much more above and beyond this that I will talk about on different episodes as well. But for now, I want your eyes to be a little bit more opened as to what goes on week to week and how it may affect your training and your progression. So let's get into it. The first thing I will say that the greatest power of being a woman is to be a woman. You do not understand how magical we all are. Literally mystic unicorns, can I please just say? And that is honestly something to be so proud of. So, the first thing we're going to chat about today is the menstruation kind of phase. Menstruation is the day or the week that you actually start bleeding in your cycle. This marks day one of the cycle itself. So the day you start bleeding is day one. I know that sometimes people think that's like the end of your cycle, but no, that's the beginning, and that is day one of a new cycle. In this actual kind of stint of time, in these few days, and this normally lasts from, say, day 1 to 4 or 5, as we know, for how many days we are bleeding, that is the menstruation, we will have certain symptoms. Symptoms like abdominal pain and cramping. We all know what that feels like and the discomfort of bleeding and the first 5 days of the cycle. We may like have some lower back pain. Everyone is completely different as well. So please know that when I chat through all of this, everyone's completely different. But this is kind of the main things that we see, and 90% of the time what we may suffer with. So yes, we might feel some lower back pain, some bloating. We never get away with not feeling a bit bloated, which is always amazing. Some sore breasts and chest area. Of course, they may feel a little bit more tender. Food cravings. And please know that this is something that we all have. It might be maybe the week before or the week of the actual cycle, but food cravings and your appetite will always fluctuate due to hormones fluctuating. And that's really, really important to take on board, especially when it comes to nutritional goals and when it comes to obviously progress, because you will think that you're broken and you will think that, oh my God, it's just me. My appetite is soaring or my appetite is deflating. No, it is your hormones. Absolutely. So, yes, you might see and feel some food cravings, or you might have no appetite at all. For myself, I actually don't have any appetite, probably day one and day two of my actual cycle when it begins. It's very strange. I normally find that like I'm not hungry at all, and the cramps and discomfort has my appetite quite low. But yeah, it's quite kind of individual from person to person. Appetite might soar or it might crash and you might not have any at all. But then literally come day three and onwards, she's right back up for me. Then we do have a lot of mood swings and irritability. Please know that we are literally in so much discomfort and pain on these days and the first few days of the cycle as we are bleeding from the inside out. That of course we're going to have some moods and we're going to feel a bit irritated. And that is absolutely fine. Give yourself some grace for this, but also do not play up to it because, we don't want to use it as an excuse either. But that is the reasoning probably behind feeling irritated a lot easier. Headaches, and a huge thing to know that on the first few days of your cycle while you are bleeding, you are going to be more dehydrated. Think about it. Think about the liquids that we are losing and, the hydration that we need in this time. So it's very important to, hydrate yourself as much as you can while you are kind of on day one to day five of your cycle. Now, please know hydration is key all of the time, but especially during this week. Okay. We don't want that headache kind of feeling. We don't want that fatigue and low energy. So hydrate and make sure that we are getting in a good bit of liquids because we're losing a lot as well. Of course, fatigue and energy can be lower. And the thing is here, we are number one, changing over with our actual hormones. So on day one of our cycle, a new hormone is actually brought in to the cycle. And that is the hormone of estrogen, which we absolutely love. So hormones are fluctuating a lot here when we come into day one. And that's why we will feel fatigued and energy will be lower. The body's under a lot of stress. Like, think about it. Think about the stress your body undergoes while you are on your actual period. Like, it is crazy. So, of course, we're going to feel a little bit more stressed in general. Fatigue is going to be up and we are going to have energy levels a little bit lower. But, like, please give yourself a bit of grace for this because, there's a lot going on. And this is why we are absolutely magical because we deal with this and we have our chest up, we have our head high, and we get on with life, even with all of this stuff going on behind the scenes. And then another one that you might not actually hear of a lot, but this is one that I actually found that happens to me. So I looked into it a little bit more. But you will get like a heightened sense of smell. So you will smell things a lot stronger. I know myself, I can literally smell things a mile away when I'm on my period. It's crazy. So yeah, just a little one there to add in. Not everyone probably has this, but if you've ever noticed that, that is very much so kind of a little bit more of an effect on day one and just the kind of week of your cycle as well. And as I mentioned there, day one marks the first day that estrogen starts to take over and starts to rise. And we love estrogen. So training around your cycle should be a strong week because estrogen is high and estrogen is an amazing hormone for feeling strong and feeling good in ourselves. But of course, the discomfort of actually being on our period takes over. So, the week of the period, as I said, it's very individual from person to person, but a lot of people do like and feel a lot of discomfort and a lot of pain. So, of course, training can be affected with this. So it should be a week of feeling strong and feeling amazing because estrogen is quite high and it's coming up in the world. But the discomfort can take over. And I'm very aware of that. And also the stress of everything going on in the body can also take over. Also, some people can actually suffer from really, really strong periods. So bleeding is quite heavy. And of course, that's going to affect training a little bit as well. So, training can be affected because of the discomfort of your period. But one thing I will say is you will probably feel stronger in your lifts because estrogen is nice and high. So, don't knock training on your period. I would still go and give the 100% that you can give, even if that's 40%, because you might be in a bit of pain. We're still going and showing up when we and where we can. But estrogen is nice and high here, so you still potentially could still feel quite strong on the actual week of your period. Personally, for me, I feel and I actually do get a good bit of PBs the week of my period and while I am bleeding because, yeah, estrogen is there and we absolutely love estrogen. We salute her, we want her, we love it. And as that rises, we're here for it. So, coming into the follicular phase, then. So, the follicular phase is day 1 to day 14. And can I please just say this is kind of the in and around days? Everyone is very different, but this is kind of like the 90% of what is happening in the body with these phases themselves. So, the follicular phase is day 1 to 14 of your cycle. Okay. Love, 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 love the follicular phase. And we all know those days where we are feeling ourselves. And I can guarantee that those are the days on day 1 to 14 of our cycles. Okay, so as I mentioned, obviously menstruation is kind of the period itself and the bleeding, day 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. So, yes, we can feel a bit of discomfort on those days. But at the same time, as I did mention, estrogen starts to soar and estrogen starts to get higher in these days. So, days 1 to 14 is when estrogen is at its highest. And that is why the follicular phase is the queen of all queens, because estrogen is our BFF. Literally, we are just obsessed with her and how it makes us feel. Okay. So, some of the things that we might encounter on day 1 to 14 of course, is a bit of bloating and uncomfortable on day 1 to 5 because we are bleeding, because it's the period itself. But once those days are gone, we feel amazing. The post period glow is a real, real thing. Okay. And I talk about this with all of my clients. After the period is gone, we feel like we could take on the world because estrogen is high. There's no kind of discomfort anymore. We're not bleeding from the inside out anymore. And we just feel like ourselves again. And it is just such an amazing, probably 10-day kind of window where we are just like, yes, everything is going my way. We are positive. We are feeling good. And training feels phenomenal as well. And we just love this. Okay. So now, please don't get me wrong. There could be some people being like, I don't feel like that on those days. Everyone is completely different. And there could be days, like there could be phases where someone feels phenomenal, someone might not, depending on what the actual higher hormone is. But this is kind of like the 90% of what we would be feeling. So, as well as that, there can be some water retention, obviously, on days 1 to 5 because of the stress of the period itself. But then, as soon as the period is gone, we feel balanced, we feel snatched, the water retention is gone. We feel good in our bodies, in ourselves, in our decision making. The post period glow up is real. Day 5 to 12, day 5 to 14, we feel like we could conquer the world. Conquer the world. So there is probably about 10 days of the cycle itself where we just feel like everything is in place and balanced. And that is in the follicular phase. That is when estrogen is at its all-time highest. And we are obsessed with this window of time. This is when training is going to feel like it is at its highest self, where we can hit all of our PBs. We are excited about it. We're not feeling majorly stressed. When it comes to, anyway, hormones and things like that, things feel amazing. Of course, there can be everyday things going on, work things going on, personal events going on that can cause stress. But when it comes to hormones, we are feeling good. Okay. So, in the follicular phase, training will feel stronger. We will feel really, really good with training in this phase. Estrogen at its all-time highest, and estrogen is an amazing hormone to boost, obviously, energy, boost kind of just that feel good factor, serotonin, all of that. And it also boosts just like feeling positive. Our mindset feels good. Okay. When our mindset feels good, life feels good. And that is something that we are obsessed with, right? So, as well as this, and a huge, huge kind of, I think it's like something that's kind of overlooked within our cycle because it does fall into the in between of follicular phase to luteal phase. I feel like everyone looks at, their follicular phase and looks at the luteal phase and kind of somewhat knows what's going on, but no one looks at that kind of middle ground that is ovulation. Okay. Ovulation is overlooked a lot of the time. People don't actually know when they're ovulating. People don't understand ovulation, what it is, what's going on. They just know that, hormones change. But ovulation is the actual changeover from one phase to another and from one set of hormones to another as well. It's very important for us to understand when we're ovulating because this is probably one of the biggest stages of the month and of the cycle for us. Literally, as I said, we're going from one phase into another. We're going from one hormone into another. Do you understand the stress that that has on the body? But also, how different you're going to feel as that kind of progresses into the next stage. So I think people don't really understand ovulation as much as they should. To me, this is a key element to our actual cycle itself and to our month and to how we feel. Because, like, genuinely, this is probably one of the biggest parts of our cycle when everything changes and when everything kind of progresses onto a new phase. So let's chat about her because she is important. And as always, if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Please let me know. But ovulation is extremely overlooked and commonly not even known. A lot of women don't even know when they ovulate, which is absolutely wild to me because this is number one, so important as a woman to understand what's going on in your body. Number two, to know why things might be changing and to know why you're feeling a certain way. But number three, for actual fertility and to actually understand when is that window that, you're most fertile and why and what's going on. Because obviously, as well, if you're someone who's looking to get pregnant, or who's looking to not get pregnant, this is an extremely important window to understand. Okay, so this does differ from person to person, but I do feel like once you understand the symptoms and once you understand what goes on, you know exactly when you're ovulating. Like I could tell you when I wake up in the morning on the day of ovulation, I know because of the symptoms, because of how I feel, because of how my body feels, my mindset, and everything else in between. So normally this does happen between day 12 to day 14 of your actual cycle. It could also be day 11. It could also be day 15. So let's say day 11 to day 15 is the in and around window of when you ovulate. And as I said, when you understand these signs and when you understand ovulation, you know your own. You will absolutely know your own. And as I said again, please ask any questions because I can help you figure this out. And with all of my clients, we have like trackers and monitors. So we know day one of ovulation. We know day two, day three. We know when we are going from follicular to luteal. We know when our period is literally about to begin. And this is the power that we hold. The power we hold is understanding our bodies, and that is so important. So, from in and around day 11 to 15, the egg is released from the tubes. And we love this because this is an extremely important just moment in our phases, okay? It's the start of a new phase and the start of a new hormone that is released. This new hormone is called progesterone, okay? So, as I spoke about there, estrogen is very, very high on day 1 to 14. Day 1 to 14, estrogen is at its highest. We're feeling absolutely phenomenal. We are feeling ourselves. We are feeling good. We feel just amazing because estrogen is taking over and she is running the world. But then as we come from day 14 to day 28, progesterone comes in. And this hormone isn't as friendly. Let's not lie. Okay. So ovulation is that middle ground of when we go from the follicular phase into the luteal phase. And it's also just that little phase of its own because it is when the egg is released. It's also the window of being the most fertile we possibly could be, and there is its own kind of like symptoms to this. So During ovulation, what we might actually see is an increase in body temperature because number one, that egg is being released. The actual body itself and the reproductive system is on overdrive. So of course, we could obviously just have a increase in body temperature. The blood is flowing a lot quicker. Changes in cervical mucus. Okay, so you will notice that you will probably discharge a lot more on these days. That's how I know. Literally, I will know straight away. Discharge will be a lot more kind of heightened, and you will notice it a lot more in the days of ovulation because your body is literally getting ready to like conceive. Like your body wants to conceive. As a woman, we want to have a baby. And this is the thing. Like our body knows nothing else. So obviously yourself, you have your own rights, you have your own thoughts and your own kind of plan in place, but your body doesn't know any different. Do you know what I mean? Like your reproductive system is like, okay, we're getting ready to with child here. So that is why the mucus itself is what actually protects the womb. So that's why that is more heightened in this time because we're more fertile. And then as well as that, we could get some ovulation pain. So there could be some discomfort. Think about it. We're releasing eggs. We are changing over hormones. There's a lot going on. So of course there could be some cramps. And one thing I do say here is that during ovulation, you could actually feel the same feelings that you do on like day 1 to 5 of your period because it's in and around the same things going on. It's that changeover of hormones. We are releasing the egg and we're feeling a bit more fertile and, there could be some pains, cramps, discomfort. As well as this, a libido boost. So your sex drive is going to go through the roof, literally through the roof. Okay. Anyone that is listening to this that feels like they have like a libido drive literally soar through the roof on a certain few days of the month. Yeah, that's ovulation for you. Your body is craving a male, literally, or anything. And you not even like anything, it's literally craving the fertility. Like it is craving being with the child. And your body will obviously crave that through a libido boost and those sex hormones being released more and more and more. Okay, so yeah, that's one to always take into consideration because I can guarantee everyone listening is going to say to themselves, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I know the exact days that that happens. That's when you're ovulating. Your breasts can be a little bit more tender again. Your body wants to have a child, like so. Your everything that is feeling this way because it's expecting to obviously conceive. And yes, there can be some bloating and some fluid retention. This is a huge thing. The body's under significant amount of stress here as it changes from one hormone to another, as it changes from one actual phase to another. So, of course, your body is actually going to feel, bloated. It could have some liquid retention because of the stress that it's under. So, this is why, as well, it is so important to understand each and every phase and each and every kind of stage of your actual cycle because I think a lot of the time people get in their own head thinking that, oh my God, I'm a little bit more bloated today, or, I'm holding on to more water retention, and they think that they're going backwards with their progress, is I think that they're not making any progress at all, when in reality, you're just ovulating and it's going to pass. It's all going to die back down. So it is so important to understand what's going on. And then, as well as that, you could have some mood changes and just feel a little bit more irritated. So, amazing for us that, we literally have like a 10-day window of just feeling very good, feeling amazing, all is well and balanced. And then every other day, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot going on, okay? And this is the thing though, our bodies are just amazing. Okay, they're amazing. So, when it comes to training during ovulation, nothing really changes here. Everything is fine. It's just more so you'll feel things going on within your body. And that's just something for you to be more clued in on and to understand more. Ovulation is so important. So, so important. And if you are looking to get pregnant, or if you're looking to not get pregnant, ovulation is a key factor because that is your most fertile window. If you know when you are ovulating, you know that you are the most fertile in that window. So to either, get going or to not get going because, that is when you are literally the most fertile. It is going to happen in that stage. Okay. Or, it's the most possible kind of stage for it to happen. So with training, as I said, it doesn't have a major effect on it. But one thing I will say is that training before ovulation is going to feel a lot stronger because estrogen is so high. And there's this thing that I always hear of, that to never skip leg day before your ovulation, because you are going to feel strong and amazing on those days because estrogen is so high. But as I mentioned, as we come into ovulation, that is when progesterone starts to kind of soar and starts to get higher and higher and higher. And that is when we enter the luteal phase. Okay. So the luteal phase, day 14 to day 28, progesterone is at her highest. I won't lie, everyone's completely different. Everyone is individual, and we know this, but progesterone is that hormone that has us feeling weird. Weird. I call this phase the Mexican wave because we are going through every single, it feels like we go through 14 motions in one day, in 1 hour, let alone one day. Okay, so days 14 to 28 of your cycle is your luteal phase. Progesterone is at its highest, and progesterone is what is causing the symptoms that we feel. So let's talk about the symptoms in the luteal phase, because I know that you are all going to be like, yes, I know what you are talking about now. So mood swings are at their all-time highest. We don't know what mood we're going to wake up in, but we also don't know what mood we are going to feel then 2 hours after, 4 hours after. Like, it is up and down and all around. Mood swings are high during this phase. We feel irritated so easily. It's actually quite annoying how irritated we feel, because we don't want to be irritated, but everything will irritate us because we honestly just have this overload of progesterone. Hormones are just, yeah, just fluctuating, and there's just a lot going on. And progesterone just comes with a lot of baggage. It is that hormone that has us feeling low, and that's just the only way to put it. So we feel irritated and it's annoying. We will also feel quite anxious during this kind of period of time. And that is because of progesterone. It drives these feelings of feeling low and feeling anxious, feeling not good enough. And if you ever have these feelings and these thoughts, your mindset literally doubting yourself, feeling lower, those anxious thoughts coming in, I like literally, I can put money down that you are in your luteal phase and that you are feeling that hormone drive. Okay. And with clients and with anyone that I speak to, when we are monitoring our cycle and monitoring our actual hormones, it's so important to know why we're feeling what we're feeling, because then we know why. Like, so say, for example, there could be people feeling very, very anxious and very, very irritated and just all over the place, a lot of self-doubt, wondering why they're even bothering, wondering if they're even making any progress, feeling like they're going backwards, feeling like they're not good enough, comparing themselves to everyone. And then you look at where you're at and you are 1,000% in the middle of PMS, 1,000% in your luteal phase. And that explains it all. And it's a lot nicer for you to understand that you're not broken, you're not good enough. It's just that your hormones are causing you to think like this. Okay. So a lot of fatigue within this stage, also a lot of bloating, because within this stage is PMS. And these symptoms are all PMS. So your premenstrual stress. And it is because your body is getting ready. Your body knows, okay, I'm actually not pregnant. Okay. So once your body realizes it's not pregnant, progesterone is released. And that is why all of these things then start, because your body's getting ready for another period again. And that is PMS, literally. So PMS strikes, and this is all the things that we feel during PMS. And unfortunately, it does last probably about 10 to 14 days. So you feel bloated. There's a lot more kind of water retention during this time. Your breasts can be quite tender. We can have a good bit of headaches and just feeling, maybe ill in general. Breakouts and spots. If you kind of suffer from PMS, you could suffer from acne or spots in general, and that is due to hormones, that is due to progesterone, and that is something that, I know a handful of people do suffer with. So just in case, that is always a signal that your period is on its way. And then, as well as that, we suffer with mindset. As I said, that doubt, negativity, not feeling good enough. And that genuinely is a huge factor down to the actual hormone that is driving us in this phase. So day 14 to 28 is when progesterone starts to heighten. But PMS is probably from like day 18 to day 28 or day 20 to 28, depending on the person, depending on, your actual symptoms and your cycle. So it's very individual. Now, as I mentioned, this is a very kind of practical cycle. This is a 28-day cycle that I'm talking about, which is 90% of what we see. And the reason why, and as I mentioned at the very start, is that, you know, I wanted to give you all just a breakdown of what goes on week to week for us all and in our bodies. And I want you all to be able to take in this information and absorb it and for it to be easily absorbed and broken down for yourselves. But there is so much around all of this. Like, I'm just speaking about a practical 28-day cycle here. I'm not going into, PCOS, anyone with endometriosis, anyone that suffers with, any type of issues when it comes to hormones, cycle, and just kind of your reproductive system in itself. So this is genuinely just kind of the average breakdown of a 28-day cycle. I will get into the ifs, buts, and everything around it as well, but I wanted this episode to just chat about the basics because there is so much to learn about the cycle. And if I start going into way too much at once, no one will understand what I'm talking about. So I do want to do this in steps. And that's very, very important. So, as well as this, obviously, when it comes to the luteal phase and training, okay, the luteal phase, yeah, there's a lot going on. We feel quite anxious. We do feel fatigued as well in this. And you will notice that about a week before your period, you start bleeding. You might feel lower in energy and not as strong. Personally, I feel so weak the week before my period. Like I can tell nearly to the day that I'm going to get when I'm going to get my period because of how I feel in the gym and while I'm training, because I don't feel half as strong. Maybe I'm not getting the same reps or I can't lift the same weight. But I know in my head, I'm not broken. I'm not going backwards. There is nothing wrong with me. My hormones are just driving me right now, and I am due my period. And, then the period comes and we're right back in day one again. Estrogen is back nice and high, and we're feeling ourselves and we're feeling strong again. So it is all a cycle, and it's amazing at the same time. As annoying as it might be that we fluctuate so much as women and that everything changes so much as women, it is so phenomenal what our bodies do and what goes on and what our hormones do at that. There's actually a book that I read quite recently, and I would recommend it to anyone that wants to know a little bit more. It's called It's Probably Your Hormones. Okay. And it is such a good book to just delve into things still at a surface level so you're able to understand it. Because things can get quite deep quite fast when it comes to our reproductive system and cycles and hormones and everything in general. It's very important to tiptoe into it. So an amazing book there is It's Probably Your Hormones by Mary Ryan. It's very, very good. So obviously with that, it's very important for us to know when it comes to your cycle and training, we shouldn't be opting for changing things up. We shouldn't be opting to, completely have a difference in week to week, day to day, and, with our training in general. Because what we actually want to do is still show up, to still practice discipline, to still have that routine, no matter what phase we are in. Even if we're feeling weaker, even if we're feeling stronger, even if, we are more tired or in a little bit of discomfort, we still want to show up in the ways that we can. Now, I am very aware that there are some weeks where we can only give 40%, but we give that 40%. And a huge thing that I will say is we cannot control everything that happens. And we cannot control all of the events and we cannot control all of our phases and all of the cycle itself. But we can decide how we react to it. And that's why I'm saying it's still so important to show up, to still move your body. Like exercise is so good for you and for what goes on in your cycles. So to move your body, to engage your body, and to still be in your routine. And as I mentioned, if that means giving 40%, that's still 100% of what we could give on that day. So now I just want to chat on some tips when it comes to the cycle and how to actually best, navigate through it. So number one, still exercising, and still staying in your routine. That is very important. Number two, if you are someone that suffers with, say, PMS, suffers with, PMS acne, suffers with, unbalanced hormones throughout the month, which a lot of us do, suffers with a lot of discomfort, evening primrose oils are amazing. If you don't know about these, please get to know them. Ask me any questions as well on all of this. But evening primrose oils are amazing. You can get these in any chemist as capsules, or you can get it as an actual oil, I'm nearly sure as well, but I've only ever had capsules. You take one every single day for as long as you wish, obviously. And they are amazing at just kind of balancing out hormones and kind of just making that actual cycle a little bit more bearable. So ask any questions on that, but evening primrose oils, phenomenal. Number three, monitor and track the pattern of your cycle. Oh my good Lord. If there's anyone out here listening to this, if there's anything you're going to take from it, let alone all of the information that I just gave, please track, please track, please track your cycle and the patterns of it and understand your body. Like, do you understand the power that you hold? Like, you need to actually understand what's going on and learn more, have more knowledge on it, and give yourself what is needed. Like, if you don't understand your own body as a female, you are doing yourself a disservice, like literally. So please monitor things and track things. There is apps you can use for this. Obviously, myself and my clients have tracking kind of actual systems in place, and we know exactly what's going on. And honestly, the amount of girls that have started with me that just didn't understand what was even going on with their body, what hormones were really, and the phases themselves, that now are like, I could never not imagine knowing this, because the power it holds, understanding what's going on in your body at a certain stage of the month, is insane. You also have answers to a lot of the things going on and why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Who doesn't want that? So please monitor what's going on. Number four, reduce stress as much as possible. Now, I say that very lightly because I'm very aware that no one has zero stress. No one has zero stress, but we want to just minimize it as much as we can. Number five, paracetamol is going to be your best friend when it comes to, the first few days of your cycle. And I'm very aware that we all like suffer in different ways and it's all very individual. But, paracetamol or just, taking some sort of pain relief is fine, and it probably will be your best friend in the first few days of your cycle itself. I actually had a client before tell me that she, like, we knew when her period was going to come, like clockwork. We knew when day one was, so we knew the day before the period was going to strike, and she knew to start taking paracetamol the day before her period, and she swears by it. She said she used to take two paracetamol every 4 hours the day before her period and the day of her period, and she never came into any discomfort. There was one time she forgot to do it and she was like literally in agonizing pain. So that's a huge one to take on board if you do suffer from really, really bad cramps and really, really bad discomfort. Paracetamol, and especially the day before. If you're tracking, you will know when your period is due and when the day before is. And then number six, hydration is key. Hydration is key every single day anyway, and just in general life. But as a female and seeing what we go through, especially during your ovulation and especially during the actual week of your period, we want to be hydrated to the absolute nines. Hydrated to the absolute nines. So I just want to touch on now as well. I know I kind of chatted through it individually in each cycle, but I do just want to chat a little bit on training during your cycle. Okay. So we obviously want to pay attention to the cycle and the phases, and we want to know kind of when our strength is at its highest and when it's at its lowest, because then we can play on that and we can really tune into that as much as possible. So normally your strength will be at its highest when estrogen is at its highest, which is the first kind of 2 weeks of your cycle. And then, of course, as we come into the luteal phase and progesterone is at its highest, we can feel weaker. But one thing that is huge is to still show up in the best way possible. Okay? Still showing up in the best way possible. PMS is obviously going to have us feeling a little bit weaker as well. And something that a lot of people can kind of encounter is thinking that they're going backwards with their progress, but they're not at all. It's literally just their hormones. It is literally just the fact that, progesterone is higher, so we aren't going to feel as strong, and that is fine. But being aware of this is obviously so important to make sure that you know why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Okay. And that's very, very important. So I hope that there is something that we can all take from this podcast itself, because I am obsessed with talking about our hormones, just females in general. Like, oh my God, we are just magnificent. It is crazy. Okay. And it is just insane what our bodies do. And yeah, just how we can actually tune into it and really, really delve into those cycles and use them to our own advantage. Use them to our advantage when it comes to progress, when it comes to training, and when it comes to actually understanding the windows that we have during the cycles itself. So, a huge thing I will say is to please ask me questions. I've said this a few times throughout this episode, but I am here to answer these questions and to help you understand as well. Okay. I am someone that never really understood her own cycle, her own hormones, or her own phases. And when I did start to realize what was going on, when I started to delve deeper into this, read more, understand more, educate myself, my whole world changed. I literally entered into like a new realm of understanding my own body and life itself. Because you are your body, you are your cycle. As a female, that is our bodies, like that is our life. This cycle never never ends unless we obviously get our actual pregnancy comes to life or actual menopause, which is something that I will actually be chatting about in a different episode itself. So for now, Queens, may I just add that it is not you, it is absolutely your hormones. And a lot of the time, it is not you that's thinking these things, doing these things, feeling these things. It is your hormones driving you to that point. So, for now, I hope that this was something that you could all gauge with and just enjoy and absorb as much as possible. I absolutely loved this episode and being able to share this information with you all. It is so important for us to realize that tapping into our feminine energy, monitoring, tracking, understanding, educating ourselves on our bodies and what they can do and what they can't do is very, very important. And I hope that from this episode, we have all either gotten an app to track things, gotten a book to understand something more, or just listening to this episode on repeat, really kind of like dwelling and diving into this information that I am giving you because it is so important. Probably one of the most important episodes that I will have up on this podcast itself. So, if you have gotten this far, thank you so much for listening and tuning in today. As always, I am beyond grateful having you all here and listening and just being in this safe space with me and for me to be able to share this with you all. Please like, comment, and share away so I can see you all. And as I've mentioned, to be able to share this podcast with more people because they may need it and they may need this help and this guidance that we can actually give. And as always, Queens, if there is ever a day that you are doubting yourself or you just simply don't believe in yourself, I am always over here rooting for you. And I am always over here believing in you.